Hi folks, I wanted to create a quick video on how to set up Eclipse and Git so that you've got some kind of video instructions on how to do this, because there's a few steps and it can get a little bit complicated. So I will try to point out along the way here what steps we only need to do one time and what steps are kind of going to be repeated every time you interact with Git. I guess without further ado, there are a couple of tools that we need to start with. So in the background here, I've just got a fresh Eclipse workspace set up. So you'll need Java, preferably the double E version, but any distribution with the EGit plugin will work fine. Just go ahead and make sure you've got the Java double E version for our purposes. The next tool you'll need is Git Bash, or I think it's called Git CVM maybe, or CSM. If you just punch it into Google, Git Bash, you'll come up with here, Get SCM. That's what you're going to want. So download whatever flavor is appropriate for you. That'll give you access to a tool. If you just type into your search bar here, Git Bash, you can see that comes up, and that's what this Ming W64 window is. So get that set up as well. So if you've got those two tools, we should be in business. The third thing that we need, I guess, is kind of a tool as well, is a Git account. So what I have gone ahead and done is set up a brand new GitHub account for myself with a different email address. So we're at the repo for class right now, but I've got a different user here entirely. So assuming that you've just set up a user, or you're just starting out with class here, the first thing that you need to do, and this is one of those things that we'll only need to do once, is we need to set up a SSH key and do an exchange with GitHub, so that we can interact with GitHub repos without having to worry about credentials and stuff like that. So go up to your user's icon up in the top corner on GitHub, and then go to Settings. And in here you'll find a tab, SSH and GPG keys. Go there. And right now we don't have any SSH keys, which we need to add one. So let's go about generating one. So the first thing that we'll need to do to generate one is open up our Git Bash interface. And I am going to pull over a command here. And this is in, let me show you here. This is in, if you're in GitHub and you go generating SSH keys, if we go and look at this page, you will find these commands, generating new, and here's those commands that you can copy and paste under the generating new SSH key. So if you don't want to read and type in what's on my screen here, you can do it that way. So this particular user is progradeorbit86@gmail.com. And let's go ahead and generate. So we hit enter. It's going to ask what, where do you want these keys to go? There we go. So I like letting these just go to the default location. So that default location, at least on the Windows machine, will be your users directory and then whatever user is currently active. So if we just hit enter, it's going to go to the default location. We can also create a passphrase for our keys, which for our circumstances we don't really need. This would be in the case that you wanted to further protect that public-private key pair so that you can't use it without knowing an additional password. But we don't care about that for our purposes, so we're just going to hit enter twice, and that is going to create our SSH keys. So if we go out to this folder that we look what we're looking at here, so C users elsha.ssh, we're going to see two files in there right now. We've got this ID ed25519, which is just the key algorithm. But we've got one file that's got a .pub extension, which Microsoft, at least on my machine, recognizes as Microsoft Publisher. Ignore that. It's not a Microsoft Publisher document. In fact, these are both just text files. But we've got our private key and our public key. If you want to, you can pull up any kind of a text editing program, and you can pull one of these across and check it out. Whoops, yeah, let's update that. So we can see that our public key looks like this, and our private key looks like this. So we've got them created. That's what we need. So the first thing that we've got to do with this then is we've got to tell GitHub that we've got a new key that we want it to use. So going back over to GitHub, oops. Again, that's you click on your user icon, settings, SSH and GPG keys, and then click on new SSH key. And I'm just going to call this one our primary key. Our purpose for it is authentication, and then what we want to do is copy the contents of our public key. So the one that's got the .pub extension on it, and it should just be one line. Copy the contents of this and paste it right here, and then hit add SSH key. And if everything went right and it's formatted in a way that GitHub understands it, you should see then that you've got a new authentication key entry, which is exactly what we want. So GitHub now knows that we've got a key pair that we want to use. The next step then is we've got to tell Eclipse about our key pair. So let's do that. So we'll go up to Window in Eclipse and then Preferences. And I'm just going to type Git into the search bar. Or no, I'm sorry, I'm going to type SSH into the search bar. That's going to give me two things here. We want to make sure we see Git in here because that means we've got EGit installed in Eclipse. So if you don't see Git here, back up and you'll want to make sure that you have downloaded that Java EE version of Eclipse. But otherwise, click on SSH2. And I've got one in here already, but I'm going to delete that and we'll re-add it. So when you start here, you'll see it's going to default to this .ssh folder in most all cases. If not, navigate there. You can just use browse to get to that. And then you're going to see a selection of private keys. So what we want to do is we want to add this newly created private key. So let's click on that, and we're going to navigate to that .ssh folder. Let's see here. Let's go right from the start. So this PC, Windows, C drive, users, my username, .ssh, and then here we are again. So I'm going to pull, in this case, the one that does not have that .pub extension, right? Because this needs to be the private key. So once I've selected it, I just hit open, and it's going to add it right into our private keys for us. I'm going to hit apply and close, and then I'm going to exit Eclipse altogether. Sometimes Eclipse does not pick these up immediately when you put them in there, so I'm going to just err on the side of caution and restart Eclipse. Okay. So now we are ready to start interacting with GitHub. So the first thing to do is go and find the repository that we want to work with. And I happen to have the vehicle repository from our first week of class handy here. So let's go there. I'm just going to punch the URL in and we'll go there. Okay, cool. So we're here now, but we're not the owner of this repo, right? This Plumbob86 character, he owns the repo. So what we're going to do to begin with is we're going to make a fork of this so that we can kind of have like our own little contained workspace that we can hang out in and do what we need to do. So click on this drop down next to the fork icon and create one. And this is just fine. We're going to leave everything as default here. So create fork. So now we've got our own instance of this repository. We got to let GitHub do a little bit of work here, but once it's up, there we go. Okay. So now we've got our own instance of this vehicle repository. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this URL, and we're going to start setting it up in Eclipse. So back over into Eclipse here. You may not have this window immediately available to you. So what we want to do to start adding this repo is go to Window, Perspective, Open Perspective, and then most likely it'll be under Other, and you want to go to this Git perspective. All right, and then we're going to say clone a Git repository. So this middle one, or if you don't see these options, this button right here, clone a Git repository and add the clone to this view. That's what we want. It's got a little green arrow on it, but it's a pretty tiny button. So we're going to click on that one. Since I've already copied this in, we've already got, I'm sorry, since this URL was already in my my clipboard, we pulled that in automatically, which is fine. But in the case that yours doesn't have that, you can copy and paste it in there manually. Oh, HTTPS or SSH, that's all we need to do. Our user is going to be Git, and we should be able to hit next and grab it. Okay. So this is the kind of that a little bit of the handshake that's going on between your um, between Git and this newly established key pair that we've created. So the first time that you do this, this will be a one time only thing. Um, we just want to say accept and store this key and continue connecting. And we also want to create this known hosts file so that we don't have to do that again. So both of those things we'll never have to do again. Um, we will leave this all as defaults and hit next. And we will say finish. And from there, we should have our repository brought in. So now we have a local instance of this repository from our forked branch. And what we need to do is import projects from here. So there should be, there's two in here. What we want to do is just pick the one that has the Eclipse project available. So we're just going to leave this one that's the /vehicle and it has import as Eclipse project. It won't hurt anything if you do both of them, but this keeps your workspace a little bit cleaner. So we'll hit finish from there. From that, then we're going to switch back to our Java perspective. So there's these little buttons up here in the corner. Once you've opened multiple perspectives, we should have at least a Java and a Git perspective that are open. If we flip back to our Java perspective, you can see we've got our vehicle class or our vehicle project now. Let's open that up, and we're just going to make kind of a simple change in here somewhere. So let's see. We'll just say for Git demo. All right, and then we'll save that. Okay, then we've got our stuff that we can commit. Once we've made all of our changes, we're happy with them. What we should see down here is a few files that have popped up. And these are unstaged changes, as you can see. So there's kind of there's multiple tiers of repositories inside of Git. So we've got code stored kind of here where we can see it. We've got code that's stored on a local repository, and then we've got code that's stored on the remote repository, which is GitHub. So what we're going to do is we're going to move these code changes through those three different tiers of storage. So right now, these unstaged changes tell us that we've got changes that exist only here in the IDE, only on our file system. What we're going to do is hit this double plus sign here, and that's add all files. Now you can like selectively pick and drag these ones and sort of pick and choose what you want to upload, but in our case, we know we want the example class, so we're going to add all of those over. So now we've got them staged to move into our local repository. We'll put a message on here, and that is just our git demo. We have to have a commit message. And then we're going to push, in this case, we're going to do commit and push. So this is going to do two steps. The commit step moves these from our IDE, so to speak, into our local repo, and then the push moves them from the local repo into GitHub, into the remote repo. So we can do that all in one step, or if for some reason we want to, we can commit it just to the local repository and potentially go do some more work on it somewhere else. But we'll do commit and push. So commit and push. We should see a message like this come up. Potentially, if there were errors or something like that, you'll see kind of the nature of the error. They can be pretty arcane, but in most cases, you can copy and paste them into Google and start getting some clues as to what might have gone wrong. But anyway, if everything was happy, it'll say pushed, and you'll get this message that just says close. So at that point, we should have our code out in Git. So let's take a look and see if we do. So we know that our vehicle class, we edited the example class in here. So if we go to model and go to our example model, we can see that we've got that new piece of code here that wasn't there before. So we know that we pushed everything correctly, which is awesome. All right, so now keep in mind though, what we've done so far, we have only moved that code to our own personal fork of this branch, right? So unless somebody comes into our own ProGrade Orbit 86 version of this project, they're not going to see our code. But Plumbob 86 is the sort of the master of record, right? That's the root project. So what we need to do is ask Plumbob 86 to accept our code changes. And the way to do that inside of GitHub is called a pull request. So let's go and look at a pull request. So inside of your own fork, right? So ProGrade Orbit 86 is our test user. we are going to create a pull request here to go and ask Plumbob86 to pull that code in to their project. So we've gone to pull request. We're going to say new pull request, and we should just be able to click right through this. The important bits here are that we note here that the head repository is our own, and then the base repository is that person that we want to push the code to. So in this case, it's me. In other cases, uh, you're going to be working with a group of people. You want to make sure that that base repository is whoever the owner of the repository is. You can see then it's going to give you a summary of the changes, and I guess it's good practice to make sure that that's done. But once you're happy with everything here, you just hit create pull request. It's going to adopt whatever comment you put in there, and that's fine. We can just say create pull request, and it's done. So now Plumbob86 is going to get an alert that says, hey, somebody wanted to add code to your project. And then once my lazy butt gets around to it, I will accept those pull requests, and those will be accepted into kind of the main branch, the main fork of the project, and your assignment is finished. So that is kind of the process, or all of the little bits and pieces that have to go together to make a Git repo tick. Yeah, so I guess to summarize quickly, um, do that SSH key exchange. That's just a one-time only thing. The rest of this though you can repeat multiple times. So we pull that repository into our workspace. We pull the project out of it so that we get it in our workspace. We make some changes. We stage and commit those changes. Then we head back over to GitHub, where we go to our own fork and create a pull request so that the master branch, the fork, the original fork, can adopt those changes, and that is it. So, thanks for listening. I hope this helps.